Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining me today, fresh from a jacket potato, we've got Chris Hamill. Welcome, Chris. How did the jacket potato go down? Was it good?
Absolutely stunning. Jacket potato, cheese and beans. Simple, blissful, in my top 5 comfort meals.
I've got to agree with you. Solid performer every time you need it. And joining us today, fresh from a holiday to Devon, is Michael McCubs. McCubs, how was your break?
It was lovely, blissful as well, absolutely blissful. Away from the internet and phone signal for about 3 days of it, which was pretty nice.
I do like cutting yourself off from that sort of thing. Just a good reset button. But guys, today we are talking about surprise packages in Europe's top 5 leagues, because @Stuart A. Kirk has asked, with Villarreal having made the signings they have, despite Emery's appointment, which we'll get onto in due course, can they break into the Champions League spots? Obviously, Villarreal, there's plenty of teams to talk about. AC Milan, maybe Monaco as well, we're going to cover, who have made some interesting signings so far. The leagues are starting to kick off. Ligue 1 already underway. But before we dive into Villarreal, just a quick reminder to subscribe to Eurofootball Daily and hit that notification bell to never miss a Continental Club. But McCubs, let's kick off with Villarreal because it was an interesting last campaign and they've made some great moves in the window, seemingly.
Yeah, I mean it's been quite a summer of change, hasn't it, at Villarreal? But yeah, let's kind of run through a little bit the kind of background to this, because the 1920 campaign was pretty impressive. All the more so because they bounced back from a very miserable 18-19 season. They finished 14th then, just 7 points clear of relegation, obviously up to 5th this year under Javier Calleja, who has obviously had a long-running relationship with the club as a player in the early 2000s heyday, and then as a manager, kind of on and off the last few years. Their 60-point total was actually 16 points better off than they managed in 18-19, while their 63 league goals was actually the joint second highest since 04-05, when Calleja was a player, and they finished third under Manuel Pellegrini. But the general impression that I get, I'm not really an expert on matters Villarreal, is that Calleja was never really trusted fully by the hierarchy or the support base, actually. He took over in September 2017 after Fran Escribá was fired. He led them to 5th that season, but was fired only a year later in December 2018 after one win in his previous 9 matches at the time. And then that kind of led to a bit of a merry-go-round. He was replaced by Mallorca boss Luis Garcia, but was reinstated after Garcia was fired in January 2019. So he was kind of firefighting for the kind of latter stages of the 2018-19 campaign, and then had a pretty impressive season last term, but was dismissed again in July 2020. Obviously, he'd led them back into Europe. Said afterwards that he knew the decision was coming, but felt kind of hurt by the way he'd been treated. And obviously, he's been replaced by Unai Emery, who right now probably is at his kind of lowest ebb in some ways. I think his stock is probably at its lowest it's been in some time.
Can we take a pause right there just to put in that clip of Unai Emery that George always posts on Twitter, where it's like, it's got that bizarre music, and they've kind of like,
where he's really wide.
They've turned him into like a chode. It's a mesmerising clip. Sorry to the editor who now has to go and find that.
It's quite a meme, isn't it? But I mean that I guess sums up a little bit kind of Unai Emery's reputation in at least in England, following that disastrous spell at Arsenal. But his record in Spain is pretty good. He worked at Valencia for 4 years. Kept them pretty comfortably as the third best team in Spain during an era of dominance, obviously for Real and Barca. And that was despite losing, David Villa and David Silva and Juan Mata in that time. Obviously led Sevilla to 3 Europa Leagues between 2013 and 2016. So I don't think it's the worst appointment. I don't know enough about Calleja's relationship with the Villarreal board or his kind of credentials in general, because obviously he's only managed Villarreal in his relatively short managerial career. To know whether he deserved to go. I suspect he probably didn't deserve to go, but Unai Emery does simply have a bigger history and more credentials than him. And they've lost some key players this season. I know we say that they've made some decent signings, but they have lost some key players. Carla Toko Akambi has made his loan move permanent to Lyon. He was their third top scorer this season, despite playing less than 1,000 minutes. So they'll be losing what would potentially have been some quite significant output across the whole season from him. Obviously Santi Cazorla has gone as well, and he really pulled the strings for them. I mean, even more so this season than last season. I think he got 20 goal involvements, didn't he? Something like 11 goals and 9 assists, or it might be the other way around. Forgive me if I'm wrong.
It's devastating to see him head out to the Middle East, actually.
Yeah, because I mean, he's one of those players who was playing just as well as he was in his prime. Like
exactly.
He'd really rediscovered his form, and obviously, obviously his injury problems are very well known. Kind of in the last kind of half decade, and to see him bounce back from what looked like kind of career-ending kind of injuries, it was just amazing to see, wasn't it? But I guess you can't begrudge a player kind of entering his final years of one last big payday. But it's a shame, especially for Villarreal, just because it would have been great. I mean, obviously they've got Dani Parejo in on a free from Valencia. It would have been great to see it. Would have been great to have seen them play together, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But as it stands, it looks like Dani Parejo is essentially going to have to replicate the form that Santi Cazorla showed last season, and it's not beyond him. Obviously, they're slightly different players. Dani Parejo, I'd say, he's probably a bit more of a classic box-to-box player, isn't he? But technically brilliant. Contributed 9 goals and 6 assists last season, which is not actually amazing for him, but still far and away Valencia's most potent midfielder. And in a Valencia team which were, for large parts of last season, pretty poor. 2.7 tackles and interceptions, 1 shot, 1.7 key passes. These are all numbers that would rank him pretty highly in the Villarreal side. And if Gerard Moreno can keep up the form that he showed last season, then you'd expect Dani Parejo's assist numbers to take a significant leap. So it'll be an interesting season for Villarreal. I don't know how many fans will realistically be expecting them to break into that top 4. Just considering that even though, say, I guess in the top 4, the club that could have the biggest drop off is potentially Barcelona, you'd still back them to make the top 3, wouldn't you? Sevilla still look pretty strong. Obviously coming off that Europa League win as well. So you'd perhaps expect them still to be in that kind of 5th, 6th area. But they have done good business. Obviously, Dani Parejo, as we've already mentioned, Coquelin in for £5.8 million as well. Obviously a fairly limited player, but very solid defensively. And Takefuso Kubo in on loan from Mallorca, potentially the real coup here, actually. Obviously had an amazing season in a very poor Mallorca side last term. Real Madrid clearly can't find a home for him just yet. And I think that in the long term, if they can really get the best out of Kubo this season, and say, Odegaard, who's gone back to Real Madrid this year, if he can impress at the Bernabeu, I feel like Zidane may be looking to, I don't know, I just can't see how Kubo fits into that Real Madrid squad if all their young players start performing. I think we were kind of discussing it earlier in the summer. If a club could get him on a loan and he impresses there, and he kind of finds a home there, essentially, there could be potential to make that move permanent in the long term. So that is I think a really exciting move for fans of Villarreal. The one worry is probably the defence. Obviously I think they ranked 3rd for expected goals last season in La Liga. But their defence wasn't so good. I think they kind of ranked around mid-table for goals conceded and expected goals against. So that would probably be an area that still needs work, I'd say. Obviously, Pau Torres as well has been linked with Man United in particular, hasn't he, this summer? So I think keeping hold of him is really essential if Unai Emery is to be able to kind of make any kind of progress at the club. And yeah, probably getting in another centre-back wouldn't be a bad idea as well. Raul Albiol is now 34. He played 36 league games in 1920. Can't really expect him to kind of keep on holding it down. And there are a few decent options out there. Kurt Zuma at Chelsea, Gerard Piqué even at Barca. Obviously, he expressed, his desire to go if he felt that, he had to. I think that's kind of quietened down a little bit in the last few weeks, but he would be a good experienced player to bring in at least as an option in that back line. There's Sandro Martinez from Ajax as well. Might be a bit more of a struggle to get him out of the Eredivisie, but he's been excellent, hasn't he? I was thinking of someone else as well. Oh yeah, Milenkovic from Fiorentina, but he may well be too expensive. But I think he would be an ideal partner for Pau Torres. I think they both kind of possess fairly similar skill sets actually, but both very good ball playing centre backs. Apparently Emery as well is weighing up a move for Emi Martinez from Arsenal as well, which would be an interesting one. And I was seeing reports, obviously I think Martinez has really got a taste for first team football now, hasn't he? And Arteta, hasn't really guaranteed his place next season, which is understandable because Bernd Leno was excellent before he got injured. So essentially, I think if Emery can improve that defence, I think the attack probably does the rest of the work. I know Cazorla's been a big loss, but they have invested very well in the midfield and attack this summer. So, Samuel Chukwueze is also a player who hasn't left so far either. So I think they'll have enough to challenge. I mean, they'll firstly have enough to consolidate that 5th place, and if they can improve in the back line, I think they'll have enough to challenge Sevilla for 4th place. Whether that guarantees it, I don't think so necessarily, but they definitely will challenge. So yeah, I think Villarreal fans can be happy if they finish next season in 5th, but I think they will potentially be an even more exciting prospect this season. I know we're going to be coming on to AC Milan next, I believe, and I think they probably have higher ambitions, but likewise, I think fans would probably be happy there. If they are to just kind of keep that kind of solid place in the kind of Europa League, challenging for Champions League spots. So I don't know whether you'd agree with that, Hamill.
I mean, they've been fascinating, haven't they, AC Milan, this season, and I've done some research. We've done some research on them. At the start of lockdown, I did a video on Euro Football Daily, how AC Milan can fix, or how to fix AC Milan even, and they've only gone and fixed themselves, to be honest, in the latter half of the season. They had a fantastic end to the 1920 campaign, didn't they? And not a lot of people saw this coming. Stefano Pioli took over on the 9th of October. Initially, their form was dodgy and it looked like same old AC Milan, 3 defeats in his first 5 games, but after that, they really galvanised. 26 league games subsequently. Won 15 of those, drew 8, lost 3. Those losses were to Atalanta, Inter Milan, and a bit of a dodgy result to Genoa. And that run also included victories over the likes of Roma, Lazio and Juventus. So Pioli was going toe-to-toe with the big boys, which AC Milan haven't done for an awfully long time now. Consistently in the league at least. And I mean, these stats are always a little bit tenuous, aren't they? But if the season had started on January 1st, AC Milan would have been joint top of the table with Atalanta. That just gives us a good indicator of how strongly they finished. They got 44 points from 20 games, with Atalanta only peeling ahead of them on goal difference. They were scoring around 3 goals a game, weren't they? They are absolutely incredible from them. But AC were keeping pace, and their summer so far has been a little bit topsy-turvy. And the topsy-turviness didn't actually start in the summer, did it? Because Ralf Rangnick, that whole saga sort of stemmed from late last year, when it said that Gazidis had agreed to bring him in from around November time. That never materialised. Kicker claimed it was because Rangnick wanted to be both manager and technical director. And that put AC Milan in a really difficult position because, 1, Pioli was performing well, but 2, it also would have meant pushing Maldini out of that position. And, kicking a club legend out of the ranks when they were going through a bit of a, bit of a tough period. Might not have been the wisest thing to do, politically speaking. Apparently, AC Milan just wanted him to be technical director, and that's why they never reached an agreement. And since then, the likes of Zlatan, as outspoken as he likes to be, came out, backed Pioli. So did Çalhanoğlu, who's been one of the great beneficiaries of Pioli taking charge. He's finally contributing in a really meaningful way, had a really strong end to the finish. Sort of turned his AC Milan career around, to be perfectly honest. He's never really won the fans over since moving from Leverkusen, but almost has in the latter stages of 1920. And they've managed to chop some of the deadwood, which was and has been a massive problem at Milan in the last sort of five, maybe 5 to 10 years, actually. They've been bringing in players for like maybe between the 20 and 40 million pound region, hoping that they turn into 60 to 80 million pound players. And more often than not, that wasn't the case. And the likes of Biglia, he came in on big money. He came in for a sizable fee to approaching his 30s. They've managed to get him off the books. Bonaventura's gone. Pepe Reina has gone. And these were guys that didn't command huge fees when they were leaving, but they were still on cheddar. Believe you me, I've looked at the wage list. It was ugly. Ricardo Rodriguez has also been sold to Torino for near enough 3 million. So they've taken a big hit on him. I think he arrived for in the region of 17 to 20. But it was probably the right thing to do. He was an able sort of squad player, but not AC Milan quality after arriving from Germany. That became quite clear quite quickly. And they've managed to jettison Suso actually for 21.6 million. AC Milan have actually turned profit on a player. Although it did look like he was going to be a first team regular last season when he contributed to around 17 goals in 30 to 34 appearances. If memory serves me correctly. But again, maybe that was padded out by taking some spot kicks. Who knows? I've not really gone that much into it. But £22 million feels like a good fee for all parties, actually. Sevilla and AC, who need to reinvest that. And now they've got even less money to play with. And we're seeing moves like Alexis Salesmakers coming in from Anderlecht for 3.2 million. He was originally brought in on loan. Looks quite promising. He's 21 though, 13 appearances. Last campaign, around 3 tackles and interceptions, over a shot, nearly a key pass, over one dribble with a really solid pass accuracy. So what they've done there is got Suso off a bigger wage than what Salesmakers is on, and bought in another squad player and managed to earn around 17 mil net if you're comparing them sort of like for like. And I mean, Suso was never defence minded, was he? So maybe that's a little bit unfair. But defensively speaking, they did bring in Simon Kjær, didn't they? From Sevilla for around 3.2, and he made a mammoth contribution in the second half of the campaign. And actually, AC were really weak from set pieces. I recommended Christopher Ajer from Celtic for them. They needed someone that was dominant in their own box. And Simon Kjær proved to be that guy, 31 years old, played 19 games after arriving from January. And he was winning around 73% of his tackles, which is pretty elite. Anything after 70 normally raises the eyebrow. Normally gives you a case of the Ancelotti eyebrow, doesn't it? 70% of his aerial duels as well. Really, well, not an adept passer, but a fine passer, an accurate passer, knows his limitations. 3.5 long balls as well. It's pretty bog standard, but perfectly serviceable. And there's some more speculative signings that I'll bring up. I don't really know much about them. I don't know if you guys know anything about them. Dougie, has Pierre Kalulu come up on your radar in the last couple months? Not
particularly. I mean, AC Milan fans were very excited when they signed him. I think he's come from Lyon. He's a right back who can also play at centre back and left back, but hasn't made an appearance for Lyon yet. He's mainly played in the UEFA Youth League, but Lyon's academy is just continues to put out great players. Yeah. But yeah, I like you have never seen him play, so I can't really say too much.
Yeah, I mean, Gazidis has made that quite clear since he came in that would be their modus operandi from now on, signing 18 to 21-year-olds with that promise, with that high ceiling, with that sell-on factor, because they need to dig themselves out of a financial hole somehow, don't they? And until the new stadium is constructed, they obviously have grand plans for it. I've seen the plans, not in person. They didn't stop by the Football Daily offices with a blueprint and say, "Chris, I want you to see the new San Siro." But
imagine that
would be what a scoop that'd be. But seen some of the plans for it online, and it looks absolutely stunning. And until they redevelop their stadium, they're not going to be able to bring in the sort of money that enables them to compete with Europe's top clubs because of match day revenue, because of there's no corporate seats, for example, at the San Siro at the moment, so they can't charge stupid money for people to watch football. But yeah, that they've, I mean, fitting in with that whole sort of scenario that we just discussed is Sandro Tonali, of course. Feels like a big win in Milan, doesn't it? Because they snatched him from Inter. He was favourites to go there, but Conte loves his older players, doesn't he? Loves an older head, a seasoned veteran. His attention was on Arturo Vidal, and in the meantime, AC Milan managed to secure that the move for Tonali from Brescia, who's long been touted as a sort of Pirlo, the heir to Pirlo's throne, and that is probably just because they're from the same neck of the woods. Both players sort of deep line playmakers and have that hairdo, that same hairdo, don't they? I don't know if he'll live up to those expectations. They're pretty lofty, aren't they? But let's hope he does. In 1920, 35 Serie A games, just the one goal. So he needs to work on his set pieces if he's going to be compared to the likes of Pirlo. 7 assists though, so he obviously has that creative streak in him. And he has a good defensive work rate too. 2.5 tackling interceptions, not monstrous, but certainly useful if you're going to park him next to a defense-minded midfielder like it's Bakayoko, who they're contemplating bringing back, aren't they? Who's had some very productive loan stints there. 2 key passes as well, 1.2 dribbles, 39 passes a game, just to round off Tonali's per 90 figures. A lot of long balls attempted because, of course, Brescia struggled, didn't they? A lot of speculative, direct passes from him that didn't really work out. But yeah, AC Milan, I mean, you bring in Brahim Diaz as well, who's expected to sign from Real Madrid after completing just 60 La Liga minutes last campaign. If they sign Bakayoko, who's made over 4 tackles and interceptions per 90 in that Milan midfield, then all of a sudden they're looking like a really well-rounded, much younger side, and they're a much more interesting proposition. And they're making different moves, at least. If these don't pan out, at least they're objectively much more sensible moves than bringing in the likes of Biglia that we discussed before, and other like players who are 27, 28 for 30 million pounds on big money, 30 to 40 million pounds. Go and watch my video where I sort of dressed them down for that approach. I'm not going to go back into it because AC Milan fans probably think I hate them at the moment. But yeah, Rebic might complete his loan move as well from Frankfurt. That was sort of finish off this weird transfer merry-go-round where AC Milan want Chiesa as well. Juve's interest seems to have called on Federico Chiesa. So if they can get him, then AC Milan have just snapped up like most of Italy's prodigious young talents, haven't they? I mean, Inter got a couple last season, didn't they, to Juventus? But yeah, if Rebic completes his move to AC and Chiesa also goes to Milan, then apparently Fiorentina are going to get Paqueta plus cash because they still own a sell-on clause for Rebic or something along those lines. And Andre Silva gets shipped off to Frankfurt, who had a very productive second half of the season. So AC Milan, currently clearing house, making the squad younger, identified some really interesting young talent and want to mix it with some people whose values probably bottomed out because of failures at bigger sides as well, like Bakayoko. So I think that's a good recipe to challenge for Champions League football. But, you know, Pioli's never really gone the distance at a club, and part of me thinks, part of me questions whether he's going to be able to sustain that sort of excellence. But yeah, let's hope they do. It can only serve to make Serie A more competitive, Dougie. Yeah,
it will be fascinating actually, and I think that Chiesa move is potentially really interesting as well. Although I'm not quite as hot on Chiesa as other people are. I don't think his numbers are absolutely sort of, you know, he's been linked to a £70 million move, and I don't really see the value in that. Also played as a striker alongside Frank Ribery last season as well, but I think his future might lie as a sort of wing-back or a right winger, really. But yeah, it'll be interesting on Chiesa, and apparently if they don't get Chiesa, They're looking to bring back Gerard Deulofeu, who of course went on loan there, or maybe was permanent there a couple of years ago as well. So there's plenty for AC Milan fans to get excited about. But yeah, with Lazio having quite a disappointing window, there might be a slot in the top 4 next year in Serie A. So best of luck to AC Milan, and it's good to see them being competitive again at the top of the table, as Chris says. For our final suggestion, though, we're going to France, and we're trying to sort of, dissect Monaco, because it's been a weird few seasons for them. Obviously, they won the league a few years ago, then finished second the year after that. Then they had that disastrous campaign where they nearly got relegated, only just finished above the relegation playoff spaces, sacked Hardim, Hard Henry, then sacked him, then rehired Hardim. And then last season, Hardim was fired just before the winter break. The club was in 8th. They then replaced him with Robert Moreno, who you might remember replaced Luis Enrique as Spain boss when Luis Enrique had to step down for personal reasons, much publicised at the time. And then Moreno led them to 9th, I think it was, at the end of the year, with some sort of mediocre results, and then was fired at the end of that season as well, so just in the summer. Paul Mitchell was brought in as sporting director, which, if you've been a fan of Football Daily, you would have heard us mention him over the last few years. Obviously, extensive experience at Southampton, and worked with Pochettino there, which is why he was then linked with the Monaco job. Pochettino rejected them, so they brought in Kovac. Who was unemployed at the time, but obviously ex-Bayern Munich boss, had a pretty good CV on him as well. Obviously won that Pokal with Eintracht Frankfurt as well. And I think, Bayern's improvement in the second half of the year didn't paint Kovac in the best light, but actually he won a double in his only full season there. He did a pretty good job at Bayern. Of course, Hansi Flick improved that team, and fair play to him. But I think Kovac, not obviously on the Emery scale that we were talking about earlier, but his reputation has taken a bit of a hit through Bayern's subsequent success, but actually people are being a bit short-sighted about the work he did with them as well, albeit with a very good squad. And Monaco, like AC Milan and Villarreal, have kind of been ripping it up this summer in the transfer market. They've sold the likes of Jonathan Panzo, the ex-Chelsea centre-back, and Kamil Glick, who's been their centre-back for years. He's gone to Benevento, so best of luck to him. Quite a random move.
I think Panzo's gone to Dijon as well, and I was quite surprised because he was really highly touted a season or so ago. He's only like 19, isn't he?
He's still very young, and he never really got an opportunity at Monaco, and I think he might be a slight victim of the sort of chaos managerially that's gone on in the last couple of years.
Good point.
But yeah, Monaco have brought in Caio Henrique, I think I'm saying that right, 23-year-old left-back / midfielder from Atletico Madrid. Admittedly, I've never heard of him before I was doing the research for this section. He spent the last 3 years on loan in Brazil. Last year was at Fluminense and played pretty well there. 1 goal, 2 assists, 2.7 tackles and interceptions, 1.5 key passes, 1.3 dribbles. I couldn't quite find out whether he was a left midfielder or a left back. I think he's got the sort of versatility of both. So that's a pretty interesting signing. They've also, more excitingly, brought in Axel De Sassy, who, again, we've talked about on Football Daily for the last year or so, who's at Reims, the centre-back, 21 Ligue 1 appearances last campaign, 2.2 tackles and interceptions, 57% aerial duel win rate, which isn't fantastic, but for a young centre-back, he can only improve on that. But it's really with the ball at his feet that he's very impressive. 55 passes per game, over an 84% pass accuracy, 4 long balls, and we were sort of linking De Sassy with a lot of clubs towards the back end of last year, so for Monaco to get him is really a bit of a coup, and I think it's the perfect place for him to develop, actually, with the way they sort of improve young talent over the last few years. On the other end of the scale, though, they've also brought in Kevin Volland from Bayer Leverkusen, who was, I think he only had 1 year remaining on his contract, so that explains the £14 million fee, but I actually think that's a pretty impressive deal. He's 28, he's got a lot of experience in Europe's top 5 leagues now. 3 years of performing pretty well for Bayer Leverkusen. Yeah. Probably not the most exciting striking talent around in terms of, like, he's more of a penalty box, player. He's not going to go on these long, mazy dribbles. He doesn't particularly like going wide, but a very useful player, and quite surprising that Bayer Leverkusen are willing to let him go. Maybe they couldn't persuade him to sign a new contract, but of course they're about to lose Havertz as well. We're sort of waiting for that news. It might well have been confirmed before this video goes live. So Volland's an interesting pickup, and now they've got a squad full of talent throughout. Fabregas, Badiashile, who's very highly rated, Ben Yedder, Golovin, Jovetic, Slimani, less so Slimani, but Keita Balde, Volland. So they've got a plethora of attacking options. It seems like Kovac might go into the market to get another central midfielder in, particularly if they, it seems like AC Milan are getting Bakayoko, as Chris said, from Chelsea, but he was at Monaco last year on loan, so they need to replace his impact. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens at Monaco towards the end of the window.
I think Ben Yedder with Volland as well makes perfect sense, right? Because Ben Yedder, I watched my first kind of full 90 of Monaco last week. Not the most mobile guy, and you certainly want him doing like his business in the box, don't you? But Kevin Volland's had 5 seasons where he's got over 5 assists in various competitions, and he's more than capable of being a really creative player and kind of a second striker as well, right? So let's hope he links well with Ben Yedder.
Absolutely, and you've seen the Bayer Leverkusen attack. They've been one of the best sides to watch in the last few years going forward, at least. And Volland's been a key part of that. Havertz obviously profiting a lot, playing off him when he's played as a number 10 as well. So really exciting signing. Guys, I just want to ask you one quick question before we wrap up this first section. Of these 3 teams, who do you think is going to finish higher in their respective leagues?
Oh, good question.
McCubs, what do you reckon? Villarreal, AC Milan or Monaco?
It's a tough one. I kind of feel like Monaco could, just because Ligue 1 tends to be quite unpredictable in that sense. I feel like that those kind of top 4 positions often change hands. But I think if I was going to be safe, I reckon Milan probably have the best chance of breaking into the Champions League, just on the kind of form they showed last season and the players they brought in. Like, it could be a really, really exciting season for them, especially if they get Chiesa. I think him kind of coming in, adding to that midfield and attack could be really exciting.
Perfect. I mean, Chris, are you in agreement with the McCubs? Do you think it's AC Milan? I mean, having watched Monaco last weekend, do you think that this is a team that could challenge for 4th, 3rd, 2nd?
I think they were playing Metz, mate, and it was an awful game.
Oh, really?
It was absolutely dreadful. They won 1-0, but they took 3 shots all game. Admittedly, they did have a guy sent off shortly after half time. It might have actually been De Sassy. But who would finish high? It's a great question. I feel like in Italy, obviously Lazio are going to be very dependent on Immobile again. So if anything happens to him, maybe their chances of qualifying for Champions League football are a little bit capricious. Luis Alberto, very dependent on him as well. But there's always a team in France, isn't there, that's capable of finishing 3rd one season and 17th the next.
Yeah.
I think like Rennes, Lille, Marseille, they can.
Fluctuate.
In France, a team is capable of having, because they get, to be fair to them, more often than not, their talent gets
pilfered,
pinched, doesn't it? Because it's still pretty good value for money league in. I'm going to go Monaco, actually. I'm going to go Monaco. Although Nice have started the season really well. So getting into that top 4 is going to be difficult, man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was watching Lille last weekend against Reims, and they've got some pretty exciting attacking talents. They were playing, I can't remember the name of the Turkish striker they just brought in, but they're paying him with Jonathan David, with Akone and Jonathan Bambury either side. It's pretty exciting. So Liga is going to be a good watch this year, I feel.
And your boy Timothy Ware, he's coming back as well.
Yes. Yeah, he came off the bench.
Yeah. And he looks pretty sharp when he came off the bench. He missed a decent opportunity, but I did think, good competition for places with Jonathan David.
Absolutely. But guys, who do you guys think is going to finish higher out of AC Milan, Villarreal and Monaco? And who else could be the potential surprise packages in Europe's top 5 leagues? Get it in the comments down below, and let's move on to our quickfire question. We're not doing big match preview, sorry, I forgot to say before, because it's just Ligue 1 in action, and I don't think PSG are in it just yet, but big match preview will be coming back for the return of La Liga, Serie A and Bundesliga, of course, so wait for that. But our quickfire question this weekend comes in from @TheNoobMaster69. He's getting a lot of questions in at the moment. Well done, the Noob Master. And it's, what are your thoughts on the Brozovic to Bayern rumours? McCubs, this is quite an interesting one. I think it probably relies on a few different factors, but what do you make about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good move for Bayern. I think it would be, disastrous for Inter Milan, especially since the Tonali thing. I mean, I can't remember the last time AC Milan landed such a coveted star at such a young age, and especially ahead of Inter. That feels like, a slight kind of sea change, as it were. But I mean, not dwelling on that too much. I mean, the fact that they didn't get Tonali. And then if this Brozovic move were to happen, I personally can't see it happening, because I just think Inter need need Brozovic too much in that position. I don't think there's really anyone who they'd be able to target in the final 3 weeks of the transfer market who'd be able to replace him effectively. So I think from an Inter perspective, I think it's a no-go. But from a Bayern perspective, I think he'd be a great pickup. Obviously, Thiago's still projected to leave this summer. Whether that deal gets done with Liverpool is another matter. I know I've seen rumours again linking United with him. I can't see that happening. But I think as a kind of as an option to kind of come in and not necessarily be that Thiago replacement, because Thiago's obviously got more to his game than Brozovic. But I say Thiago's got more to his game than Brozovic. He doesn't necessarily have more to his game. He's just better in all those areas. I think Brozovic has a fairly similar skill sets. He's just not quite, he's just not as technically superb as Thiago. But he is one of the best midfielders in his position in Europe. And if Bayern want to kind of build on what has been, a historic season, whilst losing one of their best players, I think Brozovic, that they could probably get in for a better price than some others. To be honest, I think he's. I'm trying to think. I feel like he only maybe has 2 years left on his Inter deal. I know that he's not necessarily that keen on staying at Inter for the next 3 or 4 years. I think and Bayern, despite Inter's improvement in 1920, Bayern still obviously represents a big step up. So yeah, I think for the player and Bayern, it would be a great move. I think it would be disastrous for Inter.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly, Chris, add to so many options in midfield for Bayern. They'd have the best sort of midfield choices in Europe. Even maybe not if they lost Thiago, but where do you think he'd sort of fit in at Bayern?
Yeah, I'm just thinking now. Actually, now you've said that, because of course they have Tolisso as well, who has been out with injury an awful lot. Like Goretzka has just turned into a mammoth, turned into Hercules in the course of a season. And he's become a really prominent part of their side, and him alongside Thiago, and I could talk about him for the 20 minutes, but we're sort of like a class, intensity, and work rate. And he actually, in the second half of the season, Goretzka started to add goals to his game, to be fair to him, not just there to be a workhorse. I think, where did he finish? I think he finished as their 5th top goal scorer with 6 goals in the league, which is a pretty solid return for someone that plays in what is essentially a deeper position in midfield. Brozovic isn't going to fill the attacking exploits of the outgoing Coutinho, is he? So and maybe they don't back. Maybe there is concerns over Tolisso's injury record moving forward. I mean, I'm just probably echoing your sentiments here, guys. It'd be an excellent signing for Bayern Munich and a pretty catastrophic one for Inter. I mean, they do have really good a good two-way midfielder in Barella. Gagliardini started playing pretty well again, didn't he, towards the end of the season? At least in some of the games I watched, does lack a little bit of pace, but. So there is options in that midfield for Inter, but he's the fulcrum of that side, and you've got a guy who consistently posts over 3 defensive actions while creating over a chance, completing over a dribble and a half, super press resistant. Probably their most press resistant player when they play in Europe. It's a little bit more prevalent, I guess. Unless they're getting I don't know what the fees reported at, but if they're selling Brozovic or bringing in Vidal, that's pretty disastrous business.
Yeah, it would certainly be really surprising, considering that Brozovic, I think, played every single minute up until about early February, and then did slightly burn out towards the end of the year. His numbers did take a massive decrease, but still, in that first part of the season, he was absolutely incredible. And there's no wonder that, a club of Bayern stature are going for him. But yeah, guys, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. Let us know what you guys thought of it. Let us know whether you think Brozovic, is going to join Bayern, and which of the surprise packages we mentioned will finish higher, as I said before. McCubs, what should they go and do now?
They should stay on EFD. Obviously, subscribe if you haven't already. Go and check out, what's it called? Football Pyramid. That continues to thrill week in, week out. And I'm trying to think. Check out the latest scout reports as well. We've done some pretty interesting ones recently.
Absolutely. Anything from you, Chris?
Go check out We Need to Talk. Zach is deputising for Joe on today's episode. We're going to do a summary of the Messi saga, which is why we've steered clear of it today on Euro Football Daily.
Absolutely, trying to keep it as fresh as possible and bring you all the latest news on Messi, but also talk about other things, because it's not just the Messi show in football right now. Thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye!